Right, hello. I'm going to be talking you through today over the poem Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Now, this is one of the most popular poems and well-known poems by Arnold, and as you can see here, I've written a note that this was produced in 1867, and it was believed that this was a poem that Arnold wrote on his honeymoon with his wife. Dover Beach is in Kent, and on a very clear day you can see the coast of France. So as I've put there, it's noting that passage through to France. And whilst on a surface level it seems that this is a beautiful poem about the changing tides and the ebbs and flows of the sea, actually on a more implicit level is talking about humanity and Arnold's belief that humanity is actually struggling without the role of religion in life. So if we take note of the date to begin with, Darwin's Origins of the Species and this idea that we weren't creations from God actually came out in 1859. So that's the first thing that we need to consider, and actually how hearing that news throughout society would have created a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety about, what the meaning of life is. Now, the first approach that I would say in tackling this poem, or any poem, is to first of all consider what you notice and then what you wonder. So hopefully you've already read through the poem yourself, and what I'm noticing is that this first stanza has focused on the sea, and it talks about how, so obviously I'm noticing that it's calm, how the moon is around, the narrow passage of water. So I might be wondering to myself why we're not talking about the vast sea here, why we're changing from the vastness to the narrowness, but then also it's kind of been idealised with these words such as gleams, glimmering, tranquil, obviously meaning peaceful, and this idea that the scenery has been romanticised and idealised by Arnold. However, I'm also noticing that there is a change when we see this word listen, and by having that exclamation mark there suggests that that is creating some sort of halt or pause in the flow of the poem known as caesura. So now what I need to wonder is actually why there is that pause. Listen, it's got this very abrupt tone to it, demanding tone. What do we need to listen to? So as you listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles. Now I'm noticing the use of personification here, because as we know, pebbles can't roar. But on top of that, we've got onomatopoeia. In thinking about the word roar and its connotations, perhaps suggests that the sea is feeling angry, as though that, it's there's some sense of hatred there as well. But despite that, the white waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. So this idea that there is that sense of monotony. Now what I mean by monotony, let me spell right on me, is this idea that it's a repetitive motion, seems to be quite banal or almost sort of boring in the motion. This idea that whilst on some level the sea can be inviting, it's romanticised, it can also be kind of going back to this idea that the sea isn't kind of providing that life anymore, and therefore we have this repetition of that the sea is beginning and ceasing and then again beginning again, but this time it's bringing back eternal notes of sadness. So obviously thinking about the word eternal there, that where can we find human happiness? This poem is all about the search for human happiness, and if we can't have that confirmed by God, then where can we find it? So there is, I would say, I'm noticing a change around this part. And Sophocles. Now, Sophocles is an ancient Greek playwright, and he specialised in creating tragedies, all about human suffering, all about how somebody starts at this sort of high status in society and then they end up experiencing some sort of downfall and they lose everything. So it has these notes of history towards it, and this idea that throughout time humanity has struggled to come to terms with perhaps finding our reason for being here, despite people's attempts. Then we've got that this was spoken upon the Aegean Sea. Now the Aegean Sea is the sea separating Greece and Turkey, so it's this idea that these confused feelings are continuing throughout nations, throughout the world, and the sea is kind of the thing that is providing that message. So I'm also noticing now that because the sea is such an important image in this poem, I'm now beginning to wonder that it is this extended metaphor, an extended metaphor being something that continues throughout the poem, or an idea comparison that continues, an extended metaphor for humanity. This idea that life will continue to go on just like the waves are continuing to ebb and flow, but amongst that we need to find some sort of meaning of ourself. And as I'm also noticing now, of human misery. So we've got this kind of build up of a more sort of melancholic tone. So melancholic being another word for that sense of sadness, as though Arnold is really trying to plod his way through his own sense of meaning. On our next stanza, Arnold also refers to the sea of faith. Okay, so which is in this instance a metaphor of religion. And what he's now reflecting on is how the role of religion is now declining in society. So it once was full and around the earth's shore, so this idea that everybody was united in these beliefs. But now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar. I'm also noticing that that roar was also at the start of the poem, so which is something for you to wonder about as well, why Arnold is doing that. But essentially we've got this idea, transition from past tense here to present tense, this idea that it's now the point that we're struggling to deal with that that news that if we don't have Christianity in our lives, then what do we have? And you can see here that's being reflected in some of the images and naked shingles of the world. So you can see here I've written shingle is a small pebble, so rather than it being kind of a large influence in people's lives, it's now being diminished to something small, and the idea that it's naked suggests that the religion now is vulnerable, it's potentially in danger as well. So as we approach the close, to kind of tie up this sort of messy and uncertain sort of sense of humanity in the world, we have this idea of love. And I'm noticing that love is actually the thing that is able to provide that clarity, able to find that sort of purpose for our lives again. So remember what I said about the beginning, this idea that the poem is based on a honeymoon between Arnold and his wife. He's kind of suggesting that in this sort of difficult world, we need to rely on each other to provide us our meanings if it's not guaranteed by anybody else. So you can see, and I'm noticing here, there's like that sense of relief, that it's not all doom and gloom. Love, let us be true. Think about the pronoun here, us, this idea that we're all united in this mutual feeling of chaos at times, and we need to kind of rely on each other to be together again. You'll also notice even more caesura now, and these kind of quite shorter sentences, and the use of enjambment. To remind you of what enjambment is, it's this continuous flow of lines. So therefore, that could be reflecting the movement of the sea, and also this idea that life just continues despite its difficulties. And I'm noticing a change, to lie before us like a land of dreams. We have the simile there, so now I need to wonder why that simile is being used. Well, the land of dreams, hope, possibility, this sense of future that's going to come about the unity of us all together. So various, so beautiful, so new. There is this kind of sense of, I'm noticing the use of like superlative language, which basically means that you're emphasising something. So this idea that despite all the doom and gloom, new beautiful life can come from that, and being represented as a triplet there to really create that emphasis that it's not all hope has been lost. You'll see again more triplets: neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. So this repetition of nor, even though at times life cannot provide us with joy, love, light and certainty, it can still be presented to us as being various, beautiful and new, and we shouldn't sort of forget that. So at the denouement, or the closing of the text, we've got this kind of antithesis meaning contrast, these opposite ideas which life provides us all at different times, that we are here, so talking in the present tense again, as on a darkling plain. So the darkness is growing because we don't know what lies ahead of us, yet despite all of that we're going to there's that sense of struggle and flight where ignorant armies clash by night. So this idea that what I want you to think about is wondering, well, who are these ignorant armies? Is he talking about the conflict amongst humans, amongst beliefs about the world? Is it him kind of foreshadowing future conflicts and wars created by the fact that we're all trying to find our own sense of meaning and how these can be juxtaposed with lots of different people? So not just a simple poem about a Dover beach, but actually one widely connected with what it is to be a human and how we can find our own sense of meaning in life. One other thing to note as well is usually with poetry we kind of consider always looking out for rhyme, and that being kind of looking out for one thing that we notice first of all, but you will notice here that it is very irregular. So Arnold makes no decisions in his writing to try and make things sound particularly regular and to make it sound sort of nice and neat and tidy. We're being denied that even in the stanza lengths, in order to reflect that uncertainty. So we've got quite a conflict of emotions in this, but certainly one that's going to provide lots of further thought for you.